What's good? What's good? We back in this thing, man. It's your boy BD, okay, Emerald Thoughts, aka your favorite casual, man. We back in this thing. On my last stream, I don't know, crashed or something, but we back at it. See what's going on. Make sure everything good and kosher. But y'all see the title, man. We're gonna be reacting to Tory Lanez new updates and breaking news. Honestly, after seeing him get stabbed, obviously shocked the world. But the United Way people almost topped that with the information and breaking Tory's case with the Kelsey kind of like, I guess, bodyguard or slash driver coming out and having a testimony or what's good, or having, I guess you just say like, just coming out and having like that gun, that firing gun, essentially, that could pretty much help his appeal and stuff like that. The only thing that was kind of just different that I felt like, even though this was great news, was that this is kind of hearsay. Does he have any of this recorded? Does he have any of this in text message where this could kind of change or pretty much get him out of jail right now today, honestly? Because that type of stuff, I feel like that's just you catch the person admitting it. What else more do you need? Then you have a witness, too, that was there actually watching it. It's just like knowing the context of the conversation. It's just like, that's a smoking gun. Without having that information, I feel like it's still a possibility that this could help the appeals, and maybe the prosecution should look into doing more research and stuff about this new update. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But let's get right into it, man.
We want to say thank you for coming. Today we're going to hear some really, really compelling new evidence that you've never heard before. Our legal team will explain all of that to you. We will have updates on Tory Lanez, Mr. Peterson.
One thing I did say before my stream crashed, I do like every person that chose to speak. I feel like they all did really excellent and bringing new insight and perspective to how we view these things. I think they helped change the narrative on a lot of things, even his father. So I think this was a really powerful moment for Tory, and how the public view him for sure, how the public views Meg for sure, and possibly even how this could help his appeal case.
On how he's doing. It's really sad to see the situation that he's in, and we think it's time. Enough is enough. It's time to bring the brother home. So with that, I would like to bring up our lead consultant, Mr. Walter Roberts.
Good morning.
And he say lead consultant, so I feel like the Unite the People kind of agency or organization kind of maybe does the funding of the things, and maybe even does like the approval of who may get this protection, or who they may work for. But it seems like they might have other, like he said, consultants or lawyers that may actually do the work or help them with the research or something. That's interesting when they say that word consultant. It just stuck out when I heard that. So to have like a third party also being involved with the United Way, I just feel like that makes them even more powerful, if you ask me, because I'm sure they have their own legal ways of viewing things and what they look for being some of the signs of having a good appeal case before going into trial, and who they may choose to approve and who they choose not to go for. And then when you also have outside consultants, I just think that just double downs on the security of who you choosing to work for and stuff like that, and it being a good chance you can win. You know what I mean? So
Some information Unite the People believes is exculpatory in Mr. Daystar Peterson's case, professionally known as Tory Lanez. Recently, we've been made aware that a member of the media, Mr. Gianno Caldwell, was working on an op-ed for the New York Post regarding Mr. Peterson's innocence. During his work on that op-ed, he became aware of some information in Unite the People's possession regarding a statement that was given to Unite the People by someone with information relevant to that case. The New York Post recently reached out to the prior district attorney, George Gascon, Megan Pete and her representatives, and Kelsey Harris.
And that, honestly, we just talking about the third party. That's a fourth party that got involved, and I guess maybe felt like there's a need to ask, do these people want to respond from, as far as they said, the New York Times or New York, whoever he said. I think it's a pretty reputable news outlet, especially when you're thinking like this doesn't involve any high scale politics that they may be getting paid for. Like if they're going out and doing like some type of questioning like this on a case like this, when Tory was a villain, I feel like they might feel like they have something there. So that's another party that's reputable that was trying to seek questions. Like I feel like if it was nothing, you don't go to the prosecution. You probably don't even go to Kelsey or the Rock Nation or Meg Thee Stallion's camp and ask them how do they want to respond to this or how do they feel about this new information. So that's interesting. Like I'm just trying to peep everything, little thing that I can while kind of reacting to this.
Harris and her representatives. The only party that responded last week was Megan Pete's representatives with a request for more information. A few days later, Mr. Peterson's brutally attacked in his jail cell. Unite the People represents Daystar Peterson.
So they even think that there could be some outside reason why he got stabbed and not just some in-jail politics. And the reason that they gave that he possibly got stabbed is supposedly when Tory was in a conjugal vigil or whatever I think the word is, conjugal. I don't know if I'm getting it mixed up with like when people their wife come to the jail and they actually end up doing it with them. But whatever, just visitation. And it was in the middle of visitation, and a guy's wife was there as well. And supposedly Tory hit on the girl and his wife, and the dude found out, caught wind of it, and he retaliated. But if you know the guy history that did the retaliation, supposedly, he killed a 13-year-old girl that he was molesting with a shotgun close range, like to her face. Like the dude, I just wouldn't think he even has a wife, just to be frank with you. Just off my reason and my logic on how I kind of draw conclusions, I've been like, well, if he did have a wife, she probably wasn't that hot. So I just don't see why Tory would go out the way to be disrespectful to a guy's wife that's not even cute 9 times out of 10, based on just that guy and what he's probably gonna be able to pull into a jail cell, being a pedophile murderer. Like I'm just saying, that's just my reason. But the reason that his camp gave as far as Tory Lanez is the proof that they have is that he don't even have visitation. So the likelihood of that happening is almost 0 to none because he haven't even had visitation to even have a run-in with someone's wife. So if that's accurate, that'd be interesting. I mean, I'm sure someone could fact check that as far as like if you want to call into the jail or something. I don't know if you had to be a lawyer or who, but that would be interesting to see if that's a fact you can prove. And then backdoor is like, even then it's like, even if he had visitation, did he have visitation at the same time that dude had visitation? Because supposedly it's his cellmate. It's like his neighbor, like his cellmate neighbor or whatever, or neighbor, whatever, cell neighbor, that's what I'm trying to say. And what are the odds that your neighbor right next to you also has visitation the same day you have visitation? I'm just saying the odds are not high like that, because it ain't like every day you have visitation. So the odds that you going into visitation at the same time as somebody that you know or someone that's like shoulder to shoulder with you is just not really likely. So I just wonder, even if he did have visitation, could we prove that they didn't go on visitation at the same time?
In his appellate process, we filed an appellate brief and a writ of habeas corpus on.
If that's the case, if there was no personal reason to attack Tory Lanez, that would signify why Unite the People may believe that it has some outside malicious intent on trying to get him out of here. And it wasn't just some personal jail shit. It was some shit that someone was trying to cover up, trying to stifle Tory's freedom and justice, essentially, for him, and tried to quiet the noise, whether it's to protect themselves, to protect their artists, to protect, for instance, his past lawyer that pretty much flipped on him out of nowhere. Would she have some type of agenda in trying to protect herself and not getting debarred and stuff like that? It's a lot of people, bro, that could have a motive to keep Tory silent.
On his behalf. The district attorney's office has already responded. The case is fully briefed. We're just waiting for the appellate court's decision. We were willing to wait for the appellate process.
Let me run this back real quick.
Mr. Peterson's brutally attacked in his jail cell. Unite the People represents Daystar Peterson in his appellate process. We filed an appellate brief and a writ of habeas corpus on his behalf. The district attorney's office has already responded. The case is fully briefed. We're just waiting for the appellate court's decision. We were willing.
I wonder how long until the appellate court make that decision, because if you ask me, I feel like excuse me. Talking while I was smoking. If you ask me, I feel like they put that appellate. I mean, I feel like they put that appeal in over a year ago at this point. So, how long is how long is reasonable for them to respond? Like, are we still within a reasonable time frame? And is that time frame kind of coming to an end? So we could probably expect a decision soon. I'm just kind of curious of how long the appellate court usually take to respond when the district attorney and the defense is already kind of made their 2 cents about things. My theory is Meg got shot by Kelsey, and Tory egged it on when he saw it happen because Meg didn't see it. She just placed the blame on him. They all have my phone a little cracked, so it's hard to read. They all wrong in their own way. I mean, it's possible based on what they're gonna say in a little bit from what Kelsey did. What Kelsey ended up admitting is that she shot 3 times, and Tory and I guess the bodyguard knocked it and wrestled it out of her hand, and the gun fell and it dropped another 2 times. I think Tory, if you want to say Tory egged it on, I think he egged it on as far as like the argument and the toxicness in the car, and maybe helping start the arguments and keep those going. But when the gun got pulled and the gun got shot, I don't think he was like, shoot that bitch. I don't think that happened. Not me.
The appellate process to play out. But given that brutal, unprovoked attack, we felt it necessary to come here today to provide you with this information. It is our intention to make a request to the governor to either pardon or commute the sentence of Mr. Peterson, so that when he recovers from this attack, he's not returned to a jail cell, but that he's allowed to go home and recover. Not long ago, Unite the People was approached by a gentleman named Bradley James. Mr. James informed us he was working as the bodyguard and driver for Ms. Kelsey Harris during Mr. Peterson's trial. As such, he was in close proximity and he had privy to conversations she was having with her husband and others. Mr. James.
So this is the thing that's interesting. And when he say privy to multiple conversations with her husband and other people, is there a chance one of those times he decided, I'm a recorder if I catch her saying this shit again? If he caught her saying that multiple times that carelessly, I wonder. And my other thought, I'll let them wrap up what he ended up saying is, what was I about to say? How smart or dumb is Unite the People in the sense of they have this thing that a guy comes out and says he has, or he heard certain things. How useful would it actually be in court? Would they just come out and make this declaration just to change the public narrative? Would they come out and make this declaration because they really think it could weigh on the perception of like the governor or the president as far as wanting to maintain certain type of justice or get even a little bit of clout in pardoning him because like it'll be a big story? Or do they actually feel there's a legitimate reasoning that the courts did a lot of things wrong and this is just another proof? Or is this enough just to get him out of jail? I'm just curious. Do they have recordings? Do they I'm just curious, how confident are they with this information, and how smart are they actually coming out about this? Would they come out and make this hoorah just to make a hoorah, or they really think this is the nail in the coffin? and they actually have a lot of leverage right now. Like, I just don't know if they pump faking. That would be, I mean, it still could do a lot for them personally, but it's an interesting, very interesting thing. And I'm leaning towards they have to know it has to be some type of effective, even if it's hearsay. Because at the end of the day, he got locked up on hearsay as well. Like, so it's weird. It's weird.
James informed us he was not under a non-disclosure agreement or a confidentiality agreement and was free to speak with Unite the People, and that he was doing it because his conscience would not let him not speak and leave a man in prison for something he did not do. Mr. James informed Unite the People that he was witness to the conversation Ms. Harris had, where she stated she had the gun, she fired it 3 times, Mr. Peterson grabbed her arm and knocked it down, and the gun fired 2 more times. In essence, Mr. Peterson never shot anybody, never even touched that gun, never fired the gun. This statement aligns with the statement of the only non-party witness to the case, Mr. Sean Kelly, who at trial testified he saw 2 women fighting, 2 men break up the fight, 1 man grabbed the other one's arm. Gunshots came from the passenger side. Passenger side is where Ms. Harris was sitting. This further iterates that Mr. Peterson did not shoot Miss Pete, did not shoot at Miss Pete, or did not assault Miss Pete. It's just another irregularity in a list of irregularities in this case. For example, there were 3 potential suspects in the car that night, and yet the only DNA sample was taken of Mr. Peterson, even though unknown DNA was found on the gun. Why wasn't...
Sometimes your tracks are...
See what you said. From the interviews I've seen about Tory and what people have about Tory, he suffers from short man syndrome, so he real high-headed. So he tend to have some shit, then have to backtrack. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's subjective on some of the things. I mean, I think we've all had moments where you got into a fight. I've been in a lot of fights, but being in a fight and being high-headed to want to fight somebody versus pulling out a gun and, like, trying to shoot somebody, like, that's a big difference. It's a huge gap, I would say, because I don't own a gun, don't plan on owning a gun. Well, maybe when I'm older, but like, I don't have really a violent nature, even though I can be a high-headed nature or would want to fight somebody. So it's just, it's possibility. Like, he has the short man syndrome, and I'm sure that's what led to the argument. But when the gun come out, nah, I never believed that story. Like, when she was talking about, oh, my career's better than yours, and that's what made Tory like super mad. It's just like, maybe, but I don't think that was the trigger that could say that, oh, that's why he started shooting at her. I just never believed it. In my opinion, Tory not about that life, so jail politics could definitely happen. But it being an inside job is possible as well. Yeah, I don't know, man. People want to make it seem, I know a lot of people want to make it seem like it was something that he personally did in jail. There's always a possibility. So I wasn't there. I'm not in jail with him when he talk about stuff on his songs and stuff like that he recently dropped. He do talk about being involved in certain, like, politics of prison. So anything's possible for sure. I wouldn't dismiss it. I just know it's hella convenient when the guy, which is Kelsey's driver, comes out within a week pretty much of him coming out. Tory gets stabbed when Tory been in jail for over a year now, and pretty much nothing had happened to this significance before. So it's just hella convenient, and I don't really believe in coincidences like that, to be real.
It was 2 suspects because Meg can't be a suspect for herself.
Why wasn't the driver of the car, Mr. Jaquan Smith's DNA?
I mean, not with the story that we have now. It's not a chance that she was a victim, but the fact that it was 2 girls' DNA on the gun, technically, she should have been in the police scope as far as we're still going to DNA test her.
This further iterates that Mr. Peterson did not shoot Miss Pete, did not shoot at Miss Pete, or did not assault Miss Pete. It's just another irregularity in a list of irregularities in this case. For example, there were 3 potential suspects in the car that night, and yet the only DNA sample was taken of Mr. Peterson, even though unknown DNA was found on the gun. Why wasn't Miss Harris's DNA?
It was 2 suspects because Meg can't be a suspect for herself.
Why wasn't the driver of the car, Mr. Jaquan Smith's DNA taken? Or was it taken and again, simply not given to the defense? We don't know. It should have been taken. It is Unite the People's understanding, regular LAPD practice at a crime scene like that, anybody who's there, the DNA is taken. Another irregularity. Why, at Ms. Harris's police interview, was a non-lawyer, non-family member record company executive allowed to participate?
That's very shady in itself. And that's what I think Tory team was hitting at when they were talking about Kelsey being kind of like manipulated to say what she said in that 90-minute interview. And I forgot that was a thing because it just slipped my mind, but it is something that stands out as far as super strange. A girl or a lady that works for Rock Nation, and that Kelsey's not necessarily 100% like in good ties with Rock Nation at that point. It gives like an intimidation factor of you better do what we told you to do, or remember we listening, like we always listening, we always watching what you're saying, and it just gives off a certain level of intimidation. And I think it's common sense that she shouldn't have been in the room. Just like with a doctor, when you're under, like, you still have like parents and stuff like that that's watching over you and your guardians. If you go to the doctor and the doctor needs to ask you a question, they'll ask your parent to leave the room because of the intimidation factor of you might not want to say certain things in front of that person. So the fact that they allow her to stay in that room, I think it is something to that you should be looked at it like that's a strange occurrence that don't seem like normal principles, especially when that's not her lawyer and that's not even really a person on her team. When you think about her at that point in time, Kelsey was at odds with Meg Thee Stallion. They was not on the same side. Meg Thee Stallion and her was beefing. At this point, this was 2 years down the road, right before the trial pretty much had started that night. Well, I think the 90-minute interview was like 2 or 3 months before the trial, but the trial was like 2 years after the shooting. So, like, at that point, her and Megan had been fell off, and they had not been talking for almost over a year. So that's, to have that Perez lady in the room, bro, it just feels like the prosecution and the judge was all in on that shit, bro.
Highly irregular situation. Normally, we see cases, strangers are not allowed in these things, but it was in this case. All of these things point to the highly irregular nature of his trial and his conviction. It is our contention that he was wrongly convicted. And while we at first were willing to let the process play out, it is our contention now that if he is not pardoned or released promptly, he may never come out. And that would be the ultimate injustice, is that he gets killed in prison for something he did not do. At this time...
Yeah, and that's my whole thing. I see what you said. He's saying he's not a good guy and stuff like that. Regardless of the conversation, that has nothing to do with why he's in jail. Like, you got to be proven with a unreasonable doubt that you did something. And the fact that I don't think they ever proved that is an injustice. The fact that they did so many foul things honestly just speak to why I think he should get off. And why it really just doesn't, him being a bad person, like, that's just two separate things. And I don't want to get into it because I really didn't follow Tory. I don't follow Tory's relationships. I don't follow his team. I don't follow his friends. I don't know how many people he's crossed over. I know he got into it with a couple other artists, but I mean that's rap stuff. Like rappers get into stuff, but it's a lot of dudes got history when you that famous and you deal with so many people. So I mean, you could argue most industry dudes aren't the greatest guys. So I'm not mad at that. I'm not about to. I'm not mad at that take. I'm not about to backpack for these guys and act like, oh no, these guys are angels by any means. They do a lot of drugs. They fuck with a lot of women. I'm sure they do things for money that most people probably wouldn't, as far as like, so maybe do unmoral things or anything like, I wouldn't even say immoral, but like they'll willingly talk about certain things or push certain narratives in music that most people probably wouldn't do. So I mean, I get it, bro. A lot of people are not the greatest, especially in the industry. There's plenty of people I could just point out. I mean, Chris Brown, the stories you hear about him, like a lot of people still fuck with him, but you could have the perspective that he's not a great person, and I couldn't be mad at you. I don't really judge him because it's hard to. I don't know both sides of the story when it comes to these guys, and that's kind of where I be standing until I get like an overwhelming amount of knowledge about certain people. For like instance, like Diddy or somebody like that, I was on Diddy trail like years ago about how he's a weird person. For like I said with Tory, it might just have slipped past me as far as some of the things he did. But like a guy like Trey Songz, that never like I if you say he's not a good guy, I'm 100% with you. The things I've seen, just in kind of like the videos and the clips, and then you get all the different girls. I don't know. That's a guy I might believe, but like I said, with industry people, I can understand why you think he's a shitty person. But that don't mean he's guilty.
I'd like to bring up Mr. Gianno Caldwell, the media member who was working on that op-ed for the New York Post. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Good morning. Thank you for coming today. My name is Gianno Caldwell. That is spelled Gianno, Caldwell, Caldwell. I am the founder of the Caldwell Institute for Public Safety at caldwellinstitute.org. I am also a member of the press for almost a decade now. I've been looking into Daystar Peterson's case for almost 6 months now, professionally known as Tory Lanez. And after reviewing the evidence, the reporting.
So we had the guy before. We got the United Way, because we talking about the advisors. You got this guy. That's 3 people. Then you had New York Times, and then I think I said there was one other source. But there's 4 different, like, what I was saying earlier. Can't even think of the damn word. But just like 4 different vetting processes that 4 different people are coming in and giving their perspective, and they all kind of went over the recent things, or for this guy instance, and the other lead counsel dude, they had probably been going over even to a more extensive amount of time, and they kind of come to similar conclusions, and they don't even work together. So all these different people kind of coming together, I think is just a powerful storm for Tory. That's why I said I really respect the people that was on this stage today, and I think they really did a good job for Tory, honestly.
In the legal analysis, I've come to the conclusion that Tory Lanez was railroaded by the former district attorney, George Gascon.
He's about to cook this dude, George Gascon.
He was also wrongly convicted. I believe if Jesus Christ was Tory Lanez's attorney, George Gascon would do whatever in his power to ensure that Tory Lanez lost that case. Tory Lanez's defense team have alleged the withholding of exculpatory evidence, prosecutorial misconduct, among other issues that I was compelled to write an opinion piece for the New York Post. It is true that last week, the New York Post editors reached out to 3 parties, one being George Gascon, Megan Pete's team, and Kelsey Harris. It is also true that Megan's team was the only ones that responded back for that request for comment.
Have you ever heard an old
Oh, most definitely. He definitely needs to move smarter. I agree with that 100%.
And that was the reason for this op-ed. Things didn't make any sense to me, many issues in this case, and I was shocked by the lack of interest from the media to ask very simple questions. There were multiple people with gunshot residue on their hands that night. Why didn't all individuals have the residue tested, their DNA tested on the weapon? That's a legitimate question. According to the prosecution, Tory was excluded from the clip of the gun, and according to Tory's defense team, they said DNA analysis showed that there was a 0.01% chance that Tory touched the actual gun itself.
And that just based on all the times a guy has fired a gun, their DNA is 99% chance gonna be on that gun. Even if he didn't fire the gun, it's gonna be a good chance his DNA is on that gun. And I think people think about fingerprints and stuff like that. Fingerprints is a part of the DNA, but I think it's sweat. I think it's even more things that could go into the process of being able to test if a guy is on that gun. So the fact that it's less than a 99% chance that he's not on it, or more than a 99% chance that he's not on that gun, is just like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? The one piece of evidence that you have that can't lie, it can't tell a fib, it can't go back on what it said. Like, it wasn't drunk that night. It's not biased. The fact that you found the weapon, had the weapon of choice, and you actually still had, like, the fact that if it had no DNA on the gun, it's like, all right, well, that might not even been a weapon that was used. Or maybe they cleaned the weapon, so we can't even use that as even though it wasn't on there was something that was done to the evidence essentially to where it don't even matter, because when we tested it, nothing was found on it. So that's just whatever. But the fact that you found 3 different people DNA on that gun and Tory's wasn't one of those people, bro, come on, man. That's crazy.
Another piece that stood out to me,
crazy.
The call that the prosecution alleged Tory made confessing to a crime. I listened to that call. I'm sure many of you have as well. I didn't hear a confession. But what really shocked me about it is if my best friend was shot maliciously by someone just 2 or 3 hours before, I wouldn't have answered the call, or if I did, I wouldn't calmly have a conversation with the individual of it. And certainly I would ask, why did you shoot my friend? And more importantly, I would never have given you my current location out of fear of you finishing the job. That was something that stood out to me. I also, in my op-ed, discussed Kelsey Harris pleading the Fifth Amendment. She wasn't accused of anything by Megan Pete or the police, and to my knowledge, she wasn't under any investigation. So why plead the Fifth?
That's so huge to me. I felt like maybe Tory's defense team wasn't as good as they could have been at attacking that issue, but her pleading the Fifth, bro, was so interesting. And so, like, honestly, bro, case breaking. Like, that case was a joke at that point. And the prosecution looked like idiots. The person that was supposed to be one of your red-handed witnesses completely flipped, don't remember anything that y'all talked about. And not only that she's not even being charged or investigated for anything. She pleads the Fifth? Like, bro, that, and she asked for immunity, and not only did she ask for it in an unreasonable time when she really wasn't, shouldn't even been looked at it, like, obviously at this point people thinking it's Tory. If Tory was really the shooter, what would she have any concern about? So that was super fucking shaky that she was showing so much concern when this was supposed to be a shut and sealed thing. Like, that shit is crazy. And the fact that they granted her immunity, bro, this case was a fucking sham, dog, from the jump. And that's why he said railroaded.
What also shocked me is the prosecution gave her immunity. For what? What did she do? Is there an allegation of her doing something? I'm not aware of that. Maybe some of you can answer that question today. During the time of trial, George Gascon, just to take you back to where we were at that particular point, he had just barely won a recall attempt. He lost support in many key demographics of voters. Crime was up in Los Angeles County. And this case would have been a silver bullet for him potentially winning. His policies obviously were bad and people were harmed. So that didn't happen, and thank God it didn't happen. At the heart of this injustice is the misuse of gun enhancement charges, a sentencing tool intended for the most dangerous and violent offenders. In Tory Lanez case,
this was huge to me. That's why I said I love the people they pick. What he says here is huge because he actually did the research. He actually went and back tested some of the other trials and what some of the precedents that had been set by that prosecutor or that DA or whatever you want to call those, governor, whatever. I can't remember exactly what George Gascon was, he said. But going back and checking that history, just like with Kamala Harris, you can go back and check the track record and you could just go see where the proof is at in the pudding, essentially. And the fact that he has a certain history that he goes against and these crimes are so much worse and gruesome is utterly hilarious.
Case, these enhancements were not supported by
just like how ridiculously like corrupt that type of shit is, honestly.
Evidence. But George Gascon, interestingly enough, who is someone who regularly would drop enhancements or not recommend them, chose to provide enhancements to Tory. And in his case, in any given situation, according to legal analysts I've spoken with, he would do 1 to 3 years if he did it without the enhancement. That's interesting.
So without the enhancement, Tory would be free already because he would have been got time served. He would have been got time served because he'd been in jail at least a year. And then if he would have got 3 years, most likely he would have got good behavior or some type of thing like that, essentially. So 1 to 3 years, this whole hoopla that you made this grand 2-year event about, this all this money you spent as far as taxpayers' dollars to prove this man guilt that you couldn't even reasonably do, all to just get 1 to 3 years. Like you see why they try to over convict or over I forget what it's called again. My mind's slipping, but when you give a person too much time on a sentence, so it makes sense that the motive that these people had. It's like, if we're gonna railroad them, if we're gonna make this story, it got to be grand. If we're gonna make an example of them, it has to be grand. And that's why they push for the 10 to 20 years, even though in most cases in a situation where it was a non-violent offense, essentially where non-lethal, I could say, you could say it's arguably violent if he did commit that, but the fact that it was non-lethal to the degree that it was really just shrapnel and not even the bullet even hitting them. Because if you hit people in the leg, I remember like people saying like that's when it comes to if you get caught, it's maybe might be a lesser charge than if you shot somebody in a lethal spot. So the fact that you didn't even shoot them in the body and you hit the ground and the ground supposedly ricocheted, is like the fact that, like they say, you already tried to get them on that and you only can really do 1 or 3 years. It's like, what are we doing? Like, what is this big story we really making a fuss about? So yeah, it's clear politics trying to push for that heavy sentence.
Why did George Gascon choose to pursue these enhancements? You know, there's offenders. In Tory Lanez case, these enhancements were not supported by evidence. But George Gascon, interestingly enough, who is someone who regularly would drop enhancements or not recommend them, chose to provide enhancements to Tory. And in his case, in any given situation, according to legal analysts I've spoken with, he would do 1 to 3 years if he did it without the enhancement. That's interesting.
I'm sure this guy did his work and spoke to probably at least a handful or more. I'd say probably 5 to 10 different people as far as like the precedent that had been set for so many other crimes. You gotta understand, there's millions of crimes that happen over the years, and they all have these convictions. And the fact that there's a precedent for only getting for certain crimes, you only get a certain amount of years. It's not that hard to do research on. So I'm sure he had a lot of different people he could go to, and they was consistently giving him less than 5 years. Like, I don't think that's bullshit, honestly.
Why did George Gascon choose to pursue these enhancements? You know, there's cases I've been looking through which George Gascon has pursued, many in which he utilized these enhancements. A couple come to mind that I would like to reference here.
If you have a 700 plus credit score,
Appreciate y'all for pulling up, man, and tuning in. Free Tory, man.
Raymond Danger Gonzalez, a Mexican mafia gang member involved in a premeditated murder of 2 young men in 2017. Despite the brutality of the crime, Gascon did recommend enhancements.
Let me go back. That ad kind of cut him off.
Which George Gascon has pursued, many in which he utilized these enhancements. A couple come to mind that I would like to reference here. 1, Raymond Danger Gonzalez, a Mexican mafia gang member involved in a premeditated murder of 2 young men in 2017. Despite the brutality of the crime, Gascon did recommend enhancements. You premeditated murdered a teenager.
Premeditated 2 teenagers with a history of crimes and a history of being in a gang, and you didn't recommend enhancements when 2 people actually lost their lives. And it's a good chance that he ain't killed people before this, and he probably would have killed people after this, and you still ain't recommend enhancements. So he gonna be back on the streets faster than a Tory in the sense of just scale on what they actually did. Like, that's insane.
And another individual, brutal crime. Why would you recommend enhancements, but you would recommend them for Tory? That doesn't make a lot of sense. He also didn't pursue sentencing enhancements for the senseless murder of General Hospital actor Johnny Whitker in Los Angeles in 2024. There's a lot of issues with this case. Many, I think, that the media should be pursuing all angles of it. We should not allow there to be unanswered questions. We should pursue open questions without fear or favor to anyone. That includes Mr. Tory Lanez. In his letter from the Birmingham jail, Dr. Martin Luther King wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If we take those words seriously, we must act when injustice is allowed to fester in plain sight." I founded the Caldwell Institute for Public Safety after my innocent teenage brother was murdered in Chicago on June 24, 2022.
If you didn't catch that, he said this guy, Mr. Caldwell, started his organization after his brother was killed unjustly. So this is not a guy that I think takes violence lightly. It's not a guy that I think supports just because he's black, we're going to support him. I think this is a guy that really is about justice. I think this is a guy that's really about fairness. And I mean, obviously, you could call me biased for having that opinion and trying to say this guy seems like his heart in the right place. But when you think somebody has lost their lives and then he's fighting for a guy that's potentially supposed to be a violent gun offender, like that, I think that just speaks volumes to the potential of him not being biased and actually thinking Tory has a case. I think that's tremendously huge, if you ask me. Tory did violate Meg restraining order against performing after her Rolling Loud, so he got that for more time. I wasn't there, but based on the thing that Tory said, and I think his team said, is that Meg had been off the stage and had, I think, been gone maybe 30 minutes to an hour. Like, the performance wasn't back to back like Meg made it seem. I think that was based on what Tory team said. That was a narrative that Meg made up to try to villainize Tory even more. But if you go look, I think it's fact checkable because this was a Twitter conversation. I remember a lot of people kind of fact checking this on Twitter, but Twitter's its own demon in itself. I think people had proved that he wasn't nowhere in contact with Meg. They never seen or crossed paths or anything like that. It was plenty of time between those people's sets, from what I've had heard. But that could be a lie. Who knows? So IDK, if that made his time longer, I will say that it did make his time longer because I don't think they did that same type of fact checking Twitter did. So that what I just said, I didn't see that second thing you said. Honestly, you would be right. I think that probably did those type of narratives, whether it's true or not, did help Tory and the judge want to over-sentence him. But I still think that was still extreme because 1 to 3 years, if you go to give him 10 years, if you just say the percentage of how many times you double that, it's like, I don't know, it might be 60, 80% more time than what most people would get. I think it's probably be even more than that. It might be like it's more than 200% because 200% would be if you're supposed to get the max sentence is normally 1 to 3 years without the enhancement. That'd be 6 if you do 200%. So 300% would be around 9 years or more. So a little bit over 300% more time than the average person would get. And I don't think that was reasonable. I think if he was to be this guy that you consider was still ego and still harassing and causing hate towards Meg, maybe you give him another 2 years, and instead of the 3, he get 5. But to throw another like 5 on top of that, or well, really 7 on top of that because of like the restraining order thing, because I gotta think like, what is, we could just look that up. Average time you could get my ass drunk as shit. $12 to 18 months. So another year and a half essentially. So that's about, if he was without the enhancements, would have got 1 to 3 years. At best, he would have been doing 4.5 to 5 years, not 10. So yeah, it was definitely a heavy hand when it came to his sentences.
Mr. Tory Lanez. In his letter from the Birmingham jail, Dr. Martin Luther King wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Cut one channel.
If we take those words seriously,
No.
we must act when injustice is allowed to fester in plain sight." I founded the Caldwell Institute for Public Safety after my innocent teenage brother was murdered in Chicago on June 24, 2022. I stand firmly for public safety, for victims' rights, and for holding criminals accountable. But justice also demands that we protect the innocent and stand against politically motivated prosecutions. This is what I believe to happen here. When we imprison the innocent, while violent offenders walk free, which is what George Gascon has often done, we undermine the very foundation of our legal system. Mr. Peterson.
I don't take that lightly when he said that George Gascon has let more violent people than Tory get off on shit. I don't take that lightly when he says stuff like that. That's stuff that you could easily fact check and look up. Honestly, if you do the work on George Gascon and probably some articles that was written about them, I'm sure it gets real deep and possibly even wicked and corrupt when it comes to talk about him.
Was never given a fair trial, free from bias, political interference, and media-driven pressure. His continued incarceration erodes public trust and diverts focus from the real work of keeping our community safe. Further, while incarcerated, Mr. Peterson was recently stabbed in prison, as many of you know, a tragic incident that underscores the urgency of this situation and the risk to his life while this case remains unaddressed. Governor Newsom, I respectfully urge you to issue a pardon for Daystar Peterson, known as Tory Lanez, in a full and impartial review of his case. California must not be a state where justice is driven by headlines instead of evidence. And in the case of George Gascon, that was often the case. So I encourage everyone here to go to caldwellinstitute.org, CALDWELL, Institute, INSTITUTE.org, and sign the petition. This petition asks for the governor to pardon Tory Lanez. Thank you.
You want more clients? You think you can scale your business?
Well, I think the thing that he talked about the most that stood out for me is the biasness that was had from the prosecution, and like he said, the political interference that was happening as well. That shit just is huge to me, and what I think really this whole trial was about. I thought it was about making an example of Tory Lanez, even though there was so much things that was going against why you just didn't have a case on him. And I think they thought it would be a lot easier because I think they thought they had the public on their side. But as the case went on, as the case got closer, a lot of people start to come to their conclusions that they're not so sure really about what happened that night. And that's what kind of made this thing not as smooth sailing as they would wish, and why they wish they could silence him, if you ask me. Because it just, you got to think about how it backfires and the backlash that comes when you can call out different things that's happened over the years. Or, for instance, this situation where you get her driver coming out a year or two later. You can't predict certain things when you railroad a person like this. And I think it would have been more effective if they just had 100% the public on their side. And as the public kind of start to kind of sway and waver, it changed the dynamics on how effective it was going to be to railroad them. And I think was the biggest misstep, because I think they thought it was going to be easy to get the black sympathy. I think they thought it was going to be easy to pretty much make Tory look like this villain where everybody was just going to buy it. So when you over-sentence him, you really don't get no backlash. But like I said, I think they fumble so much where they're almost at ends, like as far as like being able, like there's no really other thing they could say to really be like why he's still in jail, to be honest. And with more and more time and more proof, I just feel like the injustice only gets more clear. But we'll probably go another like 10 minutes and wrap this up.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I know there's a lot of noise in the media going on with other stories, but I think that this is one of the most important stories happening right now today regarding our Justice Department. My name is Diana London. I'm the CEO of the Secret Weapon Agency, which is a crisis communication firm, and I'm also the CEO of a company called London Global Strategy.
So once again, this is another outside party that has done their own work and research and came to similar conclusions. So this is actually for people, because I said the Caldwell dude ended up working for the New York Post or the Times or whatever. So it's kind of, I'm going to put those together. So you got the United Way, you got the lead analyst, you got Caldwell and the Post being together, and then you got this lady. 4 different, I think, third-party people that really has no real interest in a guy unless he really had a case. Like, obviously, he's a huge figure, and you make a lot of noise for your organization if you can get him free, but I really don't think they would make a reach to try to get a guy that they felt had no chance out just because it could make noise. Because, I mean, there's so many other artists and stuff out there that I'm sure that they could get clout off of, but it's like, we have too much integrity in a sense. I really would believe that when you talk about these type of organizations, like, they're damn, I would assume that they're not non-funded, but like non-profit organizations and certain things like that. So it's like, why would they really be into playing those shiesty type games? I just don't think that's their playing field, if you ask me. So that's just me kind of saying the fact that you got these 4 different parties that most likely have some decent integrity all coming to similar conclusions, bro. Like, what are we doing? Yeah, I gotta free the boy.
I am a member of the media as well. I'm a commentator on a few networks, and I also serve as an advisor for Giano's Institute and also another company called Promising People that is fighting to reduce the recidivism rate in this country and also to correct our criminal justice laws. As a woman who has worked in Congress on criminal justice reform, I deeply believe in law and order. I've worked alongside law enforcement. I've drafted policy to reduce violent crime. I've seen what accountability should look like. But I also know the legal system without integrity is no justice at all. When we get it wrong, when our courts fail the people they're meant to protect, we don't just ruin lives. We erode trust in the rule of law itself. That's why I'm speaking out today for Daystar Peterson, better known to the world as Tory Lanez. This isn't about fame. It isn't about celebrity. It's about fairness. Tory Lanez doesn't want special treatment. He's demanding equal treatment. And if we Americans still believe in a system where guilty must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then we must admit this case raises serious concerns. Because the truth is, Tory Lanez is serving a 10-year sentence for a crime that evidence, which laid out here today, overwhelmingly suggests he did not commit. Let's go back to the night in question, just like Gianna was just talking about, and the attorneys. As the attorneys laid out here today, the prosecution failed to produce a single shred of forensic evidence tying Tory to the actual gun. His fingerprints weren't on it. His DNA was later found to be 100% nearly excluded from the gun, as shown in the worksheet that was provided to the defense late on the eve of the actual trial, after making a request for that very document. After trial, looking at this evidence, there is a 0.01% chance Tory's DNA was on the firearm. That's a difficult statistic to equate with the story as told by the prosecution, which may be why this was not present in trial. In fact, there were 3 people that night at the scene.
I don't don't get what she mean when it's not president trial. I remember they saying it's not inclusive. I mean, it was inclusive or something like that. But I think when she's saying it wasn't in trial, that it was 100% not on there. But that's kind of on the defense too, bro. Like, but I guess they were saying that they didn't get that information till late. But I don't know, man. That would be really shiesty if that was the case. But there's so much stuff that they did that was weird behavior. I wouldn't be surprised, but I know for a fact that they said it was inconclusive, and them saying it was inconclusive was definitely them playing with the words of, I guess, law and people not really understanding what that means in the history of criminality. When you talk about being inconclusive DNA, how most of the time that means either something was corrupt with the test, that means the test didn't finish, or in the sense of it's highly unlikely that that person was on a gun. So when they just left it at inconclusive, that's when the defense has to go in and go harder at the DNA analysis person that the prosecution chose, because it's like, what do you mean inconclusive? How did you come to that conclusion? And what does that really mean for our guy, Tory Lanez? And essentially, I feel like the defense has to just hammer that home. So it's definitely huge, but you can obviously see that the prosecution was playing games as well by saying or having the person say inconclusive, or telling them, instead of obviously giving them the facts, which would kill their case. So it's weird, and I think that's a huge thing that the appellate court should look into, and going ahead and having an appeal trial, because I think that's the biggest thing. Not being on the gun, bro, like that's so huge.
Who tested positive for gunshot residues. One of those was Kelsey Harris, as Giano mentioned, the assistant to Megan Pete. According to multiple sworn testaments that you've heard today, including one from the bodyguard and driver with Harris on the 2 days of the trial, Harris admitted to firing the weapon during an emotional outburst. Tory intervened to de-escalate, not to harm. It is important to note, the police did not fingerprint anyone else who had gunshot residue on them that night, only Tory.
I dare you.
And like they said too, that also matched with Sean Kelly's initial statements were that he seen the shots coming from a woman, and after some guys, I mean pretty much the two male figures was wrestling, the gun seemed like it went to the ground or something like that. Like, I can't remember exactly his testament of the first when he first talked to, either it was the cops or the phone call or whatever they were saying initially. But then he went ahead and changed his stuff later on. But he always said that he seen the gunshots go first from the girl. And the fact that the bodyguard is now saying that is crazy. And then I think you asked earlier about why the initial driver didn't say anything. I think that was always weird. I wonder if he did make a statement and they just got rid of it. I don't know what happened with that driver. I think his name is Quan. And why he showed up the last day, and why the defense decided not to have him on the stand. Like, why even the prosecution? If you really do believe that Tory shot this girl and you feel like you got all the evidence to prove it, even the prosecution technically should want to put him on the stand, like, honestly. But it was so much weirdness with that. Like I said, him showing up on the last day, that just felt like some soap opera shit, bro. And that shit was just mind-boggling. Still to this day, the fact that we didn't get a written statement from him till after, like, it's crazy. But even then, I think he ended up saying Kelsey was the shooter too. Like, my mind's a little foggy when it comes to his statement, because I guess it didn't end up mattering, so I kind of forgot about it. But I know he said Tory didn't do it.
The investigation itself was a disaster. Bullet fragments disappeared. The gun serial number was sealed. A move that blocked the defense from investigating ownership. Police failed to follow standard procedures. Why? Didn't mark shell casings on the road, and didn't test others involved that night with DNA. This wasn't justice. It was a rush to judgment. Worse still, the prosecution knew the case was thin. So what did they do? They tacked on gun enhancements, just like they spoke about. The charges, these gun enhancements are meant for gang shootouts and armed robberies, to inflate the charges and turn a flimsy accusation into a decade-long prison sentence. Enhancements are a powerful tool against violent offenders, but using them in a case with no forensic evidence, murky testimony, and the defendant with no...
Okay, it say, mind you, the driver that night, Quan, said that Tory was trying to take the gun from Kelsey that night also. Now Kelsey bodyguard confirmed that Kelsey herself admitted to being the shooter. This was Quan, submitted in 2023. I pulled over to stop Miss P and Miss Harris. Both got out of the vehicle and continued to fight, both verbally and physically. I broke up the fight and was pulling Miss P towards the back of the car. So even with that being said, that matches what Sean Kelly was saying, and that also contradicts that Meg and Chelsea said they wasn't fighting or something like that. And then I saw Miss Harris with a gun in her hand. Mr. Peterson, my bad, ran from behind Miss Pete and myself towards Miss Harris. Mr. Peterson and Miss Harris began struggling, and Mr. Peterson tried to arm Miss Harris. So let me see. I'm trying to gather my thoughts. I saw Miss Harris with the gun in her hand. Mr. Peterson ran from behind Miss Pete and myself and towards Harris. So he passed them up and was running towards, it feels like, her while she was aiming. Like, it feels like he was in front of the barrel. Like, it don't seem like he ran from behind her in a sense. So that was already dangerous in itself. Like, that, he could have damn near risked his life. He could have possibly died if she was actually shooting any type of, maybe she was shooting in the air the whole time or towards the ground, who knows. But that could have been deadly if it's how I'm picturing it in my head. Like, it seems like he got out the car, and when he ran around the car, he said he ran behind their back and towards her. So if she's shooting towards them, it would seem that he's running towards the gun. Now, if he said he had ran from behind Kelsey, yeah, that would be different. I saw Miss Harris with the gun in her hand. Mr. Peterson ran from behind Miss P and myself towards Miss Harris. Mr. Peterson and Miss Harris began struggling when Mr. Peterson tried to unarm Miss Harris. I was still pulling Miss Pete and did not see who shot the weapon. I was luckily not armed. In my opinion, Miss Pete was also fortunate. The whole incident happened quickly within just a couple of minutes. So him saying he didn't initially see her shoot, the fact that he seen the gun in her hand, I feel like that's just like that's all you really need to say, honestly. But especially when you say he was wrestling it out her hand, like he went to go wrestle it, like it clearly don't seem like he had the intent to do any type of violence or shoot a gun. And then based on what the bodyguard said and what he said Kelsey said, that matches up as well. Like he tried to wrestle the gun out her hand and then the gun hit the ground. And that's the thing too, when the first 3 shots go off, he probably ducking, and then when the gun hit the ground, they go off again, so he still don't see who shot the gun because the gun hit the ground, he just hear it going off. Like, so that still matches what the new bodyguard had said. So I don't know, man. The only thing that was weird that this came in December 2023, and that was this was within the same month of the trial, and I think after the trial was ended, or the last day of the trial, and that's so weird to me that so you telling me he never talked to the cops? He didn't talk to the cops that night. Did he just not say anything? There's nothing like, but you can't tell me like y'all didn't question him. Y'all didn't get nothing from him. Y'all never called him back in. Y'all never said he was under investigation. Y'all never subpoenaed him. None of that. As far as the detectives, not even the prosecution. I'm talking about the detectives, and even the prosecution at that point, because at that point you're just supposed to be doing detective work. You're not even supposed to have a real bias at that point because you don't know yet. You still coming to a conclusion it could have been anybody. So that already showed, like he said, it was already biased, and like Caldwell said, it was a lot of bias into it. I wanted to present this evidence during Mr. Peterson's trial, but was prevented from doing so. The district attorney was not ready to cross-examine me and later did not call me due to the holiday court schedule. I believe I should have been allowed to present this evidence at trial. And I think, so when people say the defense still should have put him on trial and it's not the prosecution's job, I think when him saying that last part is saying that if the prosecution wasn't ready to cross-examine him, that means that he couldn't come on trial. He couldn't come on the stand unless both were ready to I guess you go examine him or whatever that word would be. So I think that was the prosecution loophole in not getting him on the stand. So it seems like the defense did try to get him on the stand, but the fact that the prosecution said they wouldn't probably be ready to like after the holidays, I think the defense went ahead, and which they shouldn't have done. They should have prolonged it regardless, because whatever Quan was going to say was going to help your case regardless. But the defense, I guess, folded which, like I said, they shouldn't have. And they said, you know what, since they won't be ready till after New Year's, we'll just go ahead without him coming on the stand. Which even still, I feel like they still should have used his testimony. But at the point, that's the same thing with the, I guess the 90-minute conversation. The fact that the prosecution and the defense should have went on that. When they used that 90-minute, I'm not rambling, I'm gonna sum this up. When they used Kelsey 90-minute thing because they said they was manipulating it, the defense should have been like, we don't want this to be played because we're not ready, or we wouldn't be ready to respond to this. And that's technically what the prosecution did to delay or possibly, I guess, play mind tricks with the defense and saying, we don't want to wait that long. Or do you want to wait that long until we finish the trial? And it's just, to me, that's why they couldn't even use his statements, because it's like, if we just go off his statements, we can't really question him. So that puts us in a vulnerability. So the only thing we could really do is put him on stand. So we couldn't just use his statements. So that's why I was just thinking, like, why wouldn't they just put just like, hey, let's read what he actually wrote, even though, so we don't have to cross-examine him, and we can just go off of that. But that will put the prosecution at, I guess, at a weakness, because if they can't really cross-examine him and question his integrity or question what he saw or didn't see, like I said, it hurts their case. And I guess that is a reasonable way to say we're not gonna put him on trial, or we're not gonna put him on a stand. But I still think it's bullshit. But I do also think that answers the question of why the defense didn't put Quan on the stand.
History, that's very important to point out. He had no criminal history. That's not justice. That's a political stunt. Let's be blunt. This prosecution had everything to do with headlines and very little to do with truth. It was about symbolism, not substance. And that should concern every single one of you here today and in this country. Because when the facts take a back seat to identity, when due process is sacrificed for public spectacle, we all lose. Just yesterday, a Los Angeles court ruled the Menendez brothers, who brutally murdered their parents, are now eligible for parole after serving 35 years. They admitted to the crime. Tory Lanez, who killed no one and has still remained his innocent today, whose case is riddled with inconsistencies and prosecutorial failures, is expected to serve a decade. How is that justice? I've worked in federal criminal justice policy. I helped pass the First Step Act during President Trump's first term. I've spent years focusing on ending recidivism, building rehabilitation pipelines, and protecting the innocent from institutional overreach. I didn't fight.
Hey, man, we need to use that Trump Connect, man. Get that pardon, man.
Fight for reform just to see the system weaponized against someone because he's famous or inconvenient. And let's be clear. If a high-profile black man with no prior violent convictions can be railroaded this easily, what hope is it for the everyday American who lacks his resources?
I mean, I think that's a bar, but it's just deeper than. It's not even a class thing. It's just an injustice thing, man. If they could do that to anybody, bro, like you could be next, and that's why you're not supposed to look over any type of injustice, especially when it comes to the people that supposed to have this power and not supposed to be biased. It's supposed to be fair, like. And technically, we employ them, and we pay their bills. Like, at that point, it starts to become tyranny when they could just do whatever they want. Honestly, and that's a slippery slope when the police and the judicial system can have that much power to be able to convict you with no real evidence.
Over criminalization, prosecutorial abuse, and restoring faith in American institutions. Well, here it is, laid bare in front of you. The prosecution manipulated the narrative. They buried key facts. They got the conviction they wanted, but not the truth we all deserve. As Giano mentioned, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. warned us that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And this case proves it. If we let this stand, if we accept a conviction based on emotion rather than evidence, we abandon the very foundation of our system, that all men are innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The timing of these events raised disturbing questions to me, and I think they all should to you as well. After over 2 years in prison after over 2 years in prison without incident, Tory was stabbed 14 times just days after a major national news outlet reached out to Megan Pete's team, Kelsey Harris, and former DA.
They say it just happened. It happened days after that. They said it happened days after being contacted. Tory been in jail 2 years. Well, a year and a half, because he got convicted December 2023. So all of 2024, and we almost halfway through the year. So Tory be in jail for 2 years, and he still have 8 years to go. But for a year and a half, really nothing happened, and you get this new information that could probably help his appeal. And literally 2-3 days after, he gets stabbed. Like that's hella convenient.
George Gascon about a story on new evidence in this case. You don't have to believe in conspiracies to see the pattern. When evidence was about to come to light, Tory was nearly killed. So let's stop pretending this is complicated. Let's stop treating this like some cultural war flashpoint. This is about a man, a father, a son, Daystar Peterson, who has sat in a prison cell for over a year based on a case that wouldn't pass the smell test in any honest courtroom. The prison system can no longer guarantee his safety, and that alone should be grounds for immediate action. But combine that with the overwhelming evidence of a botched investigation, and this becomes not just a legal issue, but a morale emergency. Tory Lanez deserves a new trial. He deserves due process. He deserves a pardon. And if justice still matters in America, he deserves to go home.
And they saying they'll square up again. They asking for a pardon, but they saying we'll go through a new trial, bro. We just want a fair trial. And I think they have a good case of winning. Just like they had a good chance of winning the last trial. They just, honestly, it was paid in bulk. Honestly, it was payola.
So what now? What do we do now? We're all here today. We are calling on Governor Gavin Newsom, the California Attorney General, and the public at large to act. If you believe in due process, sign the petition now on the Caldwell Institute page that Gianna Caldwell mentioned at change.org. Let your voice be counted. Let the system know that we see what's happening and we won't stay silent. We can't be a nation that claims to value justice but looks the other way when a man is buried beneath the weight of political motivated prosecution. Dr. King said again, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This is that threat in modern day time. This is that moment. Daystar Peterson deserves to go home today. And we, the people, have a duty to bring him home. Thank you.
I'm gonna wrap it up here. I might come with a part 2 later this week. We'll see. But his father speaks, and it's honestly very powerful. But I'm an hour in. I already worked a whole decent shift. I just wanted to get some time in with the stream and chat it up with some people and get some views in, man. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Like always, man, it's been fun. It's been a blessing.